As of recording this video, SSR Mining is down 60% in just a couple of days due to a disaster that occurred in Turkey. I'm going to go over what happened. I'm going to actually show you videos of what actually happened. And then we're going to look into whether this is a potential investment or something to stay far away from. So we're going to go into the risks that I see with this and also the potential rewards. Keep in mind, this isn't investment advice. And this is just my opinions based on my own research, and you should always do lots of your own research before investing any of your hard-earned money. And then after we go over the risks and rewards, I'm going to talk about whether I would personally place bets on SSR Mining today. So this was a landslide that happened at their Copler Mine in Turkey. It's spelled Copler, so in this video I'm just going to pronounce it Copler, but I don't believe that's how it's pronounced in Turkish. But anyway, they have this heap leach pad there. And what they do is they have basically this ground dug out and it's lined so that the chemicals they use can't leak into the ground. And what they do is they place a bunch of ore here, but they don't just fill it to this line. According to their feasibility study, they actually fill it 100 meters up or up to 100 meters. And if you can picture a football field, that's a full football field plus one end zone. 100 meters is about 110 yards. So they put all this ore up here. And then what they do is they leach the gold out using cyanide. Well, what happened is there was some sort of slip that created a landslide, and all of this ore went tumbling down the mountain. And about 1 kilometer away is the Euphrates River that runs along right here. Now, you can only imagine what kind of trouble they would be in and what kind of fines they might face if this ore filled with cyanide got into the Euphrates. So now let's look at what actually happened. This picture that you see right here, this is the leach pad. And now we're going to watch a couple of videos of what happened from 2 different angles. And this next clip is dash cam footage of somebody driving a mining truck where the landslide happened. And in this clip, you can actually see a truck, it's 2 trucks ahead, that actually gets buried by the landslide. But be looking at the top of your screen because that's where you see the landslide start.
Abi sanki bu biraz daha uzaktaymış gibi geldi bana ama. Aynen. Yani bu garanti yani. Abi şey iki kamyon arkasındaki neydi onun ismi, görüntü. Adamı görüyoruz yani, görüyoruz yani. İşte tam altında kalıp kalmadığını görmüyoruz ama nerede şey yaptığını görüyoruz. Nerede durduğunu görüyoruz yani. Ya şöyle bayağı oradan bayağı gerekiyor.
And this next clip is just a really short video of the aftermath. And now let's talk about the risks and why the stock sold off so much. First of all, there are 9 miners unaccounted for. In a press release, it says they're buried underground, but I don't believe there's any underground portion to this mine, so I believe they're buried in the rubble. So unfortunately, I think the chances that they're alive are very, very low. So 9 miners unaccounted for, and we can probably assume that they all passed away. Now, of course, we're going to hope for the best, and my prayers go out to the miners and their friends and families. The next risk with this is that the same company at the same mine had a pretty significant cyanide spill in 2022. Now, they got fined for that, and they were allowed to continue operating. But will they be allowed to continue operating after a second big mistake? We'll see. The next risk is that Copler is their single biggest mine, and it's their most important operating mine. They also have a development project that's very important as well, but that's not yet in construction, and they're going to have to spend a bunch of money to get that built. As of right now, this is by far their biggest cash producer. Next is the locals are pissed for good reason, and there were actually environmental activists warning about the possibility of this exact thing. And what they were warning about actually happened. There's already been a lawsuit filed against the company since this event happened, and I'm going to read the translation of that right now. It has been disclosed to the public many times by our association, and it has also been revealed through the technical reports submitted in the lawsuits we filed. And then they go on with some other quotes that they had in previous lawsuits that they had filed against this company. In our petitions, we repeatedly say, although the buildings were mentioned in the expert report, no questions or evaluations were included, both verbally during the discovery and in our petitions, regarding the leach pile which was flowing before an earthquake. In addition, it is necessary to determine the dimensions of the area where both past and ongoing loading has been carried out in terms of heap leaching, and to determine the possible slips and flows that may occur in the future in terms of ground, in order to clarify and dispute and meet our claims. Considering the experiences of the past year, some facilities have experienced demolition, slipping, and flowing. Again, the landslide disaster in the heap leach field in recent months and the earthquake in the region reveal the extent of the risk and destruction. So these slips were already happening, just at a lesser level. Something else I was really disappointed about was their press release the morning that this happened. It reads, SSR Mining announces a suspension of the operations at the Copler Mine as a result of a large slip on the heap leach pad. This event occurred on the morning of February 13th at approximately 6:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and all operations at Copler have been suspended as a result. To call this a large slip? Are you kidding me? Come on. And I had to find out from Turkish news sources that there were miners trapped under the rubble. I went on to Turkish news sources and I've discovered this. Not from their press release, not the next day when they shared that, but that same day, that same morning, I found out from Turkish news sources that there were probably 9 miners dead. So if I knew that, certainly they knew that. So how about a press release that reads something like, there was a large slip at our heap leach pad that resulted in a landslide, and now 9 employees and contractors are unaccounted for and missing and buried somewhere under the rubble. Search and rescue efforts are underway, and more people are on their way to help. And all operations at the Copler Mine have been suspended as a result. Come on, as an investor, tell us what you know. Now, for clarity, I was not an investor in this company when this happened. But like, if I were an investor, that's what I would want to know. And that is relevant information that they most certainly had at that time of the press release. I was very, very disappointed in that. And the same day that this disaster happened, they also released updated guidance for all their mines and also updated technical reports for the mines. And as a result of that, they were going to have a conference call to discuss those things. Despite this disaster happening, they continued with the conference call. And I listened to this and I thought it was really tone deaf and like not allowing us investors to know any of the important stuff going on with what just happened at the Copler Mine. Now, I don't have a transcript of this in front of me, but in the beginning of the call, they briefly mentioned it like, oh, the person who was going to be running this can't be here because of what's going on at Copler, and there was a large slip on the heap leach pad, and we'll update you when we have further information. And then they go on to talk about all their assets and the updated studies on them and whatnot. And then at the end, when we get to Q&A, they end the call, they end the Q&A after one question about what happened, about the disaster that happened. I thought it was really weird that they even had this call, considering what happened. Like, it would make sense if they're like, hey, we're going to postpone this for now. Sorry. Like, we were planning to do this today, but we're not going to. And here's what's going on with our Copler mine, and here's what's going on with this landslide that happened. And by the way, they have yet to even mention that it was a landslide. And in this conference call, they didn't even mention that their guidance might be affected by what happened today. And also, they were talking about how great their safety record was in 2023. On the same day this happens, and you have 9 people missing and probably presumed dead, doesn't look good. Bad stuff is going to happen with every company. It's inevitable. Eventually, something bad will happen with every company. But how you respond to it and how you let your investors know what's going on is really important. And so far, I'm very disappointed with what they've done with that. The next thing is, will Copler ever reopen? And if it does, how long will it take? Now, I'm not smart enough to know, but it's obvious that locals are really pissed, especially since people were warning about this. Experts were warning about the potential of this happening. This could be a politicized issue, and in my opinion, for good reason. So will the government continue to let it operate? I don't know. Do they need to sell these assets to some other company and let some other company run them? Maybe. And I mentioned assets plural. Well, the Copler mine is in Turkey, and SSR Mining has a really, really important development project called Hadmaden. And Hadmaden is also in Turkey. Will the disaster at Copler also affect their ability to develop Hadmaden? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe SSR Mining will be forced to sell off Hadmaden or something. I don't know. Another potential risk is that 4 people have already been arrested in regards to this, one of which is the operations field manager there at the Copler mine. Now, what does this mean? I'm not sure. It could mean that they're going to be the fall guys and the government's going to say, hey, look, we're doing something about it and we're arresting these people. Or maybe 4 arrests is just the beginning of something much, much larger. And if it's the beginning of something much, much larger, well, then that could be a risk. Now let's talk about the other side of the coin. This is a very evolving situation. And actually, after I recorded that last part, I found out some new information about these 9 people who are missing. 5 are expected to be in a container hut. Now, I'm not sure what a container hut is, but I picture a shipping container that's turned into a place where you can stay. Maybe they use a shipping container, turn it into a place where workers can take a break or something like that, or where they can work from. Now, maybe it's something like that. And if they were in that, maybe they were protected enough to survive that debris. I don't know, but that's better than just them being outside and being crushed by all the rubble for sure. So maybe there's a chance. And then 1 was suspected to be in a truck and 3 in a vehicle. So maybe there's a chance to find them alive. We hope and pray that that's the case. And the next super important point is that according to their annual report last year, well, early 2023, they have insurance. Now I want to read you what it says in that annual report. Under the section of condition of physical assets and insurance, it says, we maintain insurance policies against property loss and business interruption and insure against risks that are typical in the operation of our business in amounts that we believe to be reasonable. Such insurance, however, contains exclusions and limitations on coverage, particularly with respect to environmental liability and political risk. I would love to see that insurance policy to learn in what amount the Copler mine is insured for, and if this is a situation that might be covered, because they had to shut down the mine and they could have a lot of risks and expenses associated with this in addition to that lost revenue. But if they're insured against all of that, which is a possibility based on what it says in their annual report published February of 2023, well, then they could be receiving a huge check from the insurance company. And in regards to how big of fines they might face, now it could totally destroy the company if they faced fines in the billions of dollars. However, in that 2020 cyanide spill, by the way, I made a mistake earlier. I said it happened in 2022. That was wrong. It happened in 2020, and the mine reopened in 2022. But for that cyanide spill, they were fined less than $1 million. So if that's a sign of future fines, well, then that might not have too big of an impact on the company. But if the fine gets into hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars, well, then that's going to have a serious impact on the financial health of the company. The next point I would like to make is that this landslide, it's not like it went into a town and took out a whole town of people. This landslide went down into barren land. At least it appears to be barren land where there's not really anything there. It went across a road, but I think that's about it. So, I mean, it could have been a lot worse. Like if there was a town down in that valley where the landslide happened, well, that could be really bad. But it's nothing like that. Another good thing is that SSR Mining says that the ore that spilled down didn't contain any cyanide. So I'm not sure exactly how it went. So maybe they were stacking ore onto the leach pad and they hadn't yet introduced the cyanide to start leaching the gold out. And if it's true that there is no cyanide in that, well, then that eliminates the risk of cyanide getting into the Euphrates. The next good thing is that since this landslide has happened, there has been soil testing done by the company and by third parties like an environmental agency in Turkey. And all of them are saying so far that no cyanide is being found in those tests that are being done in the field. So that's a really good sign in terms of minimizing the environmental destruction of this disaster. And the day this happened, this information wasn't available. So that made me really nervous about how big of fines and how big of cleanup costs that SSR Mining could face in regards to this. But if there was no cyanide in this ore and there's no cyanide being detected in the stuff that spilled down into the valley, that's a really good sign that it's not as serious as some people are making it out to be. I'm not trying to minimize the seriousness of what happened, but I don't think anybody is going to argue with me that having no cyanide going into the water sources is better than having cyanide going into the Euphrates. And there's a couple other really good points in terms of their financials. One is that they have other profitable mines. So they're still cash flowing even as all this happens, because all this is happening at the Copler Mine, but then they have a few other mines that are producing cash every single day. And in addition to that, they have $262 million of net cash. So you take their cash minus their debt, and this is what you're left over with, $262 million. So they're a very financially stable company. So I think the most likely scenario is that Copler reopens sometime in the future. Will that happen? I don't know. When will it happen? I don't know. This is just my best guess. I think it will happen. If I had to take a guess, I would say probably within a year. But anything could happen, and I could definitely be wrong. But even if Copler never reopens, the company is trading at very, very low valuations. So now let's look at the valuations. The stock is very volatile right now, but at the moment it's trading at 475 USD. And that puts the market cap at about $970 million. However, remember they have that net cash of $262 million. So you subtract that. So the market is valuing the company at $708 million, and compare that to the net present value of the company's assets, and that is $3.72 billion. And that's including Copler. So with Copler included, the company is trading at 19% of NAV. Just 19%. That is very, very low for a producing mid-tier company. But let's assume Copler never reopens and SSR Mining gets zero value for Copler. In that case, the company is trading at 34% of NAV. So that's assuming Copler will never ever reopen. The company is still only trading at 34% of NAV, meaning that today, buying the stock, you're basically buying a dollar for 34 cents. So now let me give you my take on the company, whether it's a buy here or not. The day this happened, I was really worried about cyanide getting into the Euphrates. And with that gigantic unknown, I thought it was too big of a risk. But now that we're getting news and we're getting tests coming back, and it's not just the company saying they're not detecting any cyanide, but also an environmental agency in Turkey saying they aren't detecting any cyanide, well then that's a very good sign that that's not going to be a problem. And that was the biggest thing I was concerned about, other than the people losing their lives. So since the stock price has plummeted and we have received that confirmation that there's no cyanide being detected, I would say, yes, I think it's a buy here. Now, I'm sure someone will say, how could you possibly recommend this? You're profiting off of other people dying, you're profiting off of tragedy. And you know what? Whether I buy stock in this or not, it's not going to bring those people back. This event already happened. And my action today cannot do anything to change that. The very first rule of investing that anybody learns is buy low and sell high. And in order to buy low, that often means buying when there's a tragedy or buying when there's panic. Almost any time the stock price is super, super low or the stock price of some company crashes is after something really bad has happened. So if you can't get past the idea that stocks are cheap when something bad happens, I mean, maybe investing isn't right for you. Or maybe you can work on that to try to figure out how you can get past that mental barrier. Because in order to buy low, you have to buy when there's panic. And when there's panic, it usually means that something bad happened, whether it's something bad that happened with the economy, whether it's something bad that happened with that particular company. Anyway, like buying low means buying when something bad happened. So that's the number one rule of investing. And if you can't get past that, well, maybe you need to work on that. And if you can't work on that, well, maybe investing isn't for you. I'm not in any way trying to justify what happened or trying to diminish the importance of what happened or anything like that. I'm just trying to look at this objectively to determine whether right now it's a good speculation or not. And in my opinion, yes, it is. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe to the channel. And next, watch one of these videos that's going to help you become a better mining stock investor.